May 7th, 1697. On this day, a devastating fire broke out at Stockholm's Royal Palace. It is said that around 24,000 books and more than 1,000 manuscripts were destroyed, causing enormous damage to the royal library. However, there was one book that remained unharmed despite the massive fire. This was because it was thrown out of the window in time, and the book was so gigantic that it even injured a person standing below. I'm talking about the Codex Gigas, also known as the Devil's Bible. No one knows how the fire started in the royal palace, but experts believe the cause was the book itself. Throughout history, whoever owned it faced misfortune, which is why it is often called the most dangerous book in the world. But more dangerous than its journey is its origin. Our story begins in the early 13th century in the Kingdom of Bohemia, at a Benedictine monastery in a place called Podlasis, which is in the modern-day Czech Republic. There was a monk named Herman living there, and one day, he broke the monastery's rules. As punishment, he was sentenced to be walled in alive. Desperate for mercy, Herman begged for his life, and the head monk gave him an offer. If Herman wanted to save himself, he had to write a book in a single night that contained all the world's knowledge, an impossible task. With no other choice, Herman began writing the book, but as midnight approached, he realized he couldn't complete it in time, already guilty of breaking the rules. Herman turned not to God but to the devil. It said that Herman summoned Lucifer that night and asked him to help finish the book. In return, Lucifer demanded Herman's soul, to which Herman agreed. Lucifer completed the book overnight, and by morning, Herman had the book in his hands, but he had lost the soul. When the head monks arrived the next morning, they were astonished to see a 160-pound, approximately 72 kilograms, book in front of Herman. The pages were made from calfskin and donkey skin, and the book was about 36 inches 3 feet long, with beautiful illustrations throughout. Let's now look at the book's journey, which is equally intriguing. The historical records mentioned in Codex Gigas stop at the year 1222, suggesting that it was written that year. The first page contains a note mentioning the Podlasis monastery, indicating its origin. The note also states that in 1295, the monastery gave the book to the Sedlec monastery, and in the same year, it was sold to the Brevnov monastery. In 1594, the Emperor Rudolf II of the Kingdom of Bohemia took the book from the monastery library to read and never returned it. It said that Rudolf was fascinated by the devil's portrait on page 57 of the book. But why is there a portrait of the devil in the Codex Gigas, and was it drawn by the devil himself? Some sources claim that Herman drew it as a thank you to Lucifer. After Rudolf's death in 1612, the book remained in Prague for a few more years. However, during the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, the Swedish army looted the book and took it to Sweden. In 1649, it was placed in the Royal Swedish Library in Stockholm as part of Queen Christina's personal collection. However, Queen Christina was also said to have faced the book's curse, as she abdicated the throne in 1654 and moved to Rome. She took many of her books and manuscripts with her, but left the Codex Gigas behind. Then, in 1697, the fire I mentioned at the beginning occurred. The Royal Library at the Stockholm Palace suffered significant damage from the fire, but the Codex Gigas remained unharmed. In 1768, a new royal palace was built in Stockholm, and the entire library, including the Codex Gigas, was moved there. Finally, in 1878, the National Library of Sweden was established in Stockholm, and the Codex Gigas was placed in its treasury room, where it still remains today. Although visitors can see the book, it is kept in a closed cover to prevent damage. But why is this book called the Devil's Bible, and what makes it so mysterious? The Codex Gigas is referred to as the Devil's Bible because it contains the entire Bible written in Latin, along with several other Christian texts. However, the legend that the devil wrote it gives the book its infamous reputation. Later pages in the book contain spells, formulas related to witchcraft, instructions on how to summon or exorcise spirits, and a Bohemian calendar with historical details. There's even a map of heaven in one of its pages, though disturbingly, there are no living beings depicted in it. What makes this book even more mysterious is that there are confessions written across 5 pages, where Herman asks for forgiveness for his sins in capital letters. The most striking feature is the devil's portrait on page 7, where the devil is depicted wearing a loincloth, which only royalty wore, giving him the title Prince of Darkness. Could Herman really have written this book? Experts note that despite the book's 630 pages being filled with text and illustrations, The handwriting and ink used remained completely consistent from start to finish. If it had been written by multiple people, or if Herman had taken years to complete it, the handwriting would likely have changed. But since it didn't, many believe that supernatural forces may have been involved. A strange fact about the Codex Gigas is that it contains 2 Hebrew letters on the first page. Even though the rest of the book is entirely in Latin, this suggests that Herman may have started writing it, but Lucifer finished it. Another bizarre story associated with the Codex Gigas is that of a caretaker who, after falling asleep in the library, woke up to see books floating off the shelves and dancing in the air. All the books eventually circled around the Codex Gigas, and it, too, began to dance. The caretaker was found the next morning, terrified and hiding under a table. His mental health deteriorated afterward, and he was admitted to a psychiatric institution. Interestingly, 10 pages of the Codex Gigas are missing. Some believe the missing pages contain prayers to summon the devil, while others think they held rules from the Bohemian monastery. But without those pages, we'll never know for sure. The Codex Gigas remains one of the most mysterious books in the world, and while you can view it in person at the National Library of Sweden or read a scanned PDF online, its secrets are still locked within its pages. Do you think the Codex Gigas was really written by the devil? Let me know in the comments.